Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So on behalf of William Daroff, CEO, Malcolm Hoenlein, Vice Chair, and myself, welcome to our Zoom today, Israel Under Attack, Assessing the Latest Challenges. We're pleased to be joined by Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser and Colonel Miri Eisin. Each is going to speak for about 7 to 10 minutes, and then we'll open up for Q&A. We are on the record today, and just to remind everybody to please use the hand raise function to ask a question. So Colonel Eisen is a senior fellow at the Center for International Communication at Bar-Ilan University and a fellow, and a fellow of the Institute for Counter-Terrorism at IDC. She served in the Israeli military. Really having a weird thing going on my machine, I apologize. She served in the Israeli intelligence community and retired from active duty at the rank of full colonel in 2004. Over the 20-year career in the military, she served as the deputy head of the Combat Intelligence Corps, the personal assistant to the Director of Military Intelligence, and as the intelligence officer in combat units and research departments. After retiring from the military, Colonel Eisen served as the Israeli Prime Minister's international media advisor from the Second Lebanon War until the end of 2007. Over the last 15 years, she's been one of Israel's main presenters, speaking on regional geopolitics and security-related issues in the media worldwide. Thank you so much for joining, and now the floor is yours.
Diane, thank you so much. And one of the most amazing things about speaking to the Conference of Presidents is right now, I myself want to go through the pages of Zoom and just see all of the people who are here. So many people that I know, so many, and I respect you all so much. So first of all, good afternoon from Israel, and thank you all for taking the time. I want to use my 7 minutes by breaking down reality. There are a lot of people online right now who are not going to like what I say. I know who you are. Having said that, I still want to do so. I want to offer you a different framing, not just of the last 2 weeks, but overwhelmingly of what we look for towards the future. Literally, until May 10th, 2021, Monday, 2 weeks ago, when I discussed the Palestinian arena, I would talk about the Gaza Strip under Hamas, the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority, and the issue, the challenge of Israel and the world with East Jerusalemites. But now I'm starting to talk about 4 arenas. And I did not think that I would do so in the past. And I think that we need to look, when I said the Palestinian arena, and to talk about 4 arenas: Gaza Strip under Hamas, West Bank, Palestinian Authority with all of its challenges, East Jerusalemites, and a portion, I can't really say in that sense what it means, of the Arab citizens of Israel who would define themselves as Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship. And I think it's something that we need to acknowledge. I'll try and address afterwards what I think it means. Just by talking about the last 2 weeks in 4 arenas and not in 3, for me is something different. The IDF look at the Gaza Strip, the people of Israel look at the Gaza Strip overwhelmingly in Israel. We view the Gaza Strip as being A, a hostile entity, B, ruled since 2007 by Hamas, C, not our responsibility for sure. And I would even say in that sense, I don't want to say not our problem, we border it, but not our responsibility. I put that out there because I want to differentiate within the Gaza Strip between 2 million people who live there, and they've grown from 1 million to 2 million in the last 25 years, which also means that half the population there is under the age of 25. And I think that continuing to look at it in the way that we have in the 14 years of Israeli policy since Hamas took over, I think that perhaps we need to look at a different way at this challenge called the Gaza Strip. That would be the element number 1, 4 arenas, and perhaps to look at the Gaza Strip in a different way. Second point that I want to make is a point about the calendar. So I was looking at the calendar before and I thought Conference of Presidents, North America, and most likely you have plans for Memorial Day weekend or not. But at the end, it's a big weekend in the United States. And anybody who's in Israel never heard of Memorial Day weekend. And even for that matter, around the world, it is a US national holiday. It isn't anywhere else. In the month of May 2021 showed the impact of colliding calendars, national, religious, lunar, solar, things that you think that you'd be able to assess up front. But when you're looking at 4 different arenas, Gaza Strip, separate from West Bank, separate from Jerusalem, separate from, as I said, Israel proper, you don't necessarily realize the implications of what happened in the calendar in May 2021, of Ramadan, of Laylat al-Qadr, of the term El-Aqsa for Muslims. Ramadan is always a month of tension, but in Jerusalem, the city of religion, the city of, for all of us, of spirit, when we talk about the month of Ramadan for Israeli police, police headquarters, police inside Jerusalem, Ramadan is a month where you need to contend with potential threats, threats of people coming out, of people doing acts of terror, of unrest. Think of the point of view, if you're looking at the month of Ramadan as a potential terror threat, as a potential friction threat of how you were aligning yourself, of what you were doing in your deployment of forces. And if you're looking at Ramadan as a month of prayer or as a national month, let alone with the rhetoric that has been coming out, not just by Hamas, about Jerusalem over the last few months. In this year, in 2021, Jerusalem Day, Ramadan, for me, Jerusalem Day, the heart of Zionism. How can you take Zion out of Zionism? The reunification of Jerusalem ended up in May 10th this year because of that lunar, solar, Jewish calendar where it moves all the time, same time as the Ramadan, same few days after Laylat al-Qadr, that combination of calendars, of religious dates, of abiding and understanding what that means. I feel that in Israel, the different security voices and even the different governmental voices, each view in a different way the implications of a calendar, of what it means to have the month of Ramadan, of what it means to be Israel's sovereign in the holy city of Jerusalem, and how we allow and enable religion to be free, and how at the same time we look and view Ramadan as a month of friction, of threats, and how we need to align to that. The last point I want to make is about Jerusalem itself. And this is a stage where I'm really going to bug everybody. And I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm doing it because I'm Miri and because sometimes I feel the need to say things that are not said. I'm breathing deep. Jerusalem is me. It's in my heart. I'm not sitting in it right now. It's me. My parents made Aliyah to Israel because of Zionism. Zion is at the heart of Zionism. Zion is Jerusalem. All of you wonderful people of the Conference of Presidents, Jerusalem is not just Israeli. Jerusalem is not just Jewish. Jerusalem is not just religious Christian. It's not just religious Muslim. Jerusalem means a lot, not just to the state of Israel. And I ask us to be incredibly responsible, as we have been, to be incredibly responsible with the enormous, amazing responsibility and authority that we have, because we are sovereign over Jerusalem. And to be custodian of the holy places in Jerusalem is not just in that sense the sovereignty aspect. It is something where you need to do things where you are responsible and not just authoritative. And I say it from the depth of my heart. I'm not sure that it's something that we always say in these arenas, and I throw it out there. 4 arenas, calendar, and Yerushalayim, Birat Israel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. Brigadier General Yossi Kuperwasser is a senior project manager at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs and the former Director General of the Ministry of International Affairs and Strategy. In his long career at the IDF, Kuperwasser served as Assistant Defense Attaché for Intelligence at the Israeli Embassy in Washington, an intelligence officer of the IDF Central Command, and head of the Analysis and Production Division of the IDF Directorate of Military Intelligence. He's had a significant role in determining Israel's coping methods with terror, as well as regional developments, and sharing such analysis with the US and other foreign entities. Kuperwasser authored a wide variety of publications on the Middle East, terrorism, and intelligence, and he's an opinion contributor to the Israeli daily paper Haaretz. The floor is now yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Diane, and I must say that I don't write that much for Haaretz anymore, but I write on other places. Yes, I'll not take it from where Miri left us, which is very emotional, and I fully agree with her. But let me say a few points that are more down to earth. First of all, I want to say that we were fighting two separate wars in this last couple of days. For Israel, this was mainly one more round in the war of many rounds that we fight against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It was different than previous rounds in many respects, but it was another round of this war, since the goals we put in front of us were very similar to the goals we had in all the previous rounds, which is to restore our deterrence vis-a-vis Hamas by inflicting heavy damage to Hamas and delivering them the message that it's not in their best interest to try again and put us to a test. And we did it the difference was that it was done on steroids. So in previous cases, we did not go to the kind of heavy damage to Hamas in that short period of time, like we did this time. This time, within 10 days, we destroyed almost all of their infrastructure, including some very precious assets that they have built in the last 7 years, and they are now deprived of those assets. Yes, we know that they can launch rockets against us for a long time. We know that they have a big arsenal of rockets, but we have the Iron Dome, and they also did it on steroids on their side, so they launched more rockets in this round than they launched in 51 days in Protective Age in 2014. But again, the yield of these rockets intended to hit civilians was relatively limited. And Iron Dome managed to stand in front of the salvos of rockets that were launched against us very successfully. More than 90% of the rockets that were directed towards populated areas were intercepted. I'm not going to go over all the damage we have done to them, but let me just say that they have probably something like 200 operatives killed, including 25 key operatives at a very high level. We didn't hit the leaders themselves, unfortunately. So this was the game from an Israeli point of view, and we have this feeling, especially inside the military, of doing our job extremely well. The coordination, the intelligence was really outstanding. The cooperation between all the walks of the military was really superb. And we managed to do what we wanted to do in a very successful manner. And Hamas, if it was up to him, they would like to have a ceasefire on day 2. But we kept hitting them hard, so that by day 11, I think they got the message for sure. But on the other hand, from Hamas' point of view, the war was not about hitting Israel as much as they can. Of course, they would have liked to do that. But this was not the main purpose of the war. The main purpose of the war, from their point of view, was to gain something much different than what they were trying to establish in previous rounds. And their goal is to take over the Palestinian political arena. That is the goal they have. In the context of, they thought they would be able to do that in the context of the elections that they were promised to have on May 22nd, when this was cancelled by Abu Mazen. They took Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, everything as a pretext for launching this attack in a very provoked manner on their behalf. They brought their people to the Al-Aqsa Mosque to call for Mohammed Deif to do something about it. And Mohammed Deif, well, what could he do? He had to respond to the call. And this is what we had eventually coming our way. And from their point of view, yes, the price they paid was way heavier than the price they anticipated to pay. But still, what they gained is very important, because they managed to embarrass Abu Mazen and put him on the losing side. They managed to show that they have support in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, and most of all, as Miri mentioned, within the Arab population in Israel. And this is no surprise. We know that the northern section of the Islamic movement in Israel is affiliated to Hamas. We know that, but we didn't anticipate that they would be able to bring them to the streets and cause all the havoc that they brought with. And this is something new and that we have to deal with in the coming years, not only coming weeks. And yes, in this respect, the Hamas managed to put themselves as leaders of the Palestinian political arena, and especially as the protectors of Jerusalem, which is, of course, the most important thing. This is all, by the way, based on full list of lies, like Al-Aqsa is in danger, like Sheikh Jarrah's eviction of Arab population, and all this kind of nonsense that we can deal with later. But this was the pretext they used in order to operate. But through this, we learned many lessons. First of all, we learned how difficult is our challenge within the Palestinian communities, all of them. Because what we saw was that the entire Palestinian community, be it Abu Mazen, be it anybody else, be it the Israeli Arabs inside Israel, still have difficulty to accept Israel as a Jewish state. And they still want the entire land. That is what they want. And this is what they are fighting for. And this is something very problematic. And if we thought that there were some in this tension that characterized the battle within the Palestinians between commitment to the national cause of getting rid of Zionism on the one hand, and preferring having better life on the other hand, we saw that the majority of the Palestinians are still very romantic about this issue. They still consider the struggle for the national goals and the Islamic goals of getting rid of Zionism altogether from all over the place is the main issue that they are committed to, and they still believe in these issues that are coming to them with incitement and so on and so forth. Second issue that we were going through a very interesting period during this operation is the relations between Israel and the United States, Israel and the Jewish diaspora. That is something that was put to a challenge as well. Fortunately, we managed to overcome it very successfully. The positions taken by President Biden on this issue are really highly appreciated by everybody in Israel, I think. And especially when he was standing next to the Korean president, said that there's not going to be peace until the region understands and recognizes the right, the just right of Israel to be a Jewish state. That is something that is extremely important for us to hear from President Biden and from his administration. Blinken is coming here today. I think if these are the messages he brings, we are moving in the right direction. And this, of course, on the other hand, causes us very many troubles, because we say to ourselves, coming to a third challenge, which is the Iranian challenge, who is standing behind Hamas? Who supplies them all these rockets? Who supplies them the knowledge? Who supplies them the capabilities? It is Hamas, it is Iran. So we find it extremely difficult to understand why, while saying this thing about the Palestinian issue, the Americans insist on lifting the sanctions on Iran and letting it have a lot of money that will help it support Hamas in the future. That's come difficult for Israelis to listen. We have a challenge with the American administration that we shall have to deal with. The third challenge is the challenge of the Abraham Accords and the normalization. There was a clear attempt by Hamas to weaken the agreements. I think by and large, they stood firm, and they passed successfully the first challenge, real challenge posed against them. And this is extremely important for everybody in the region, because we have to understand we are not alone. Not only that we have the United States on our side, we also have some important portion of the Arab world on our side in this matter, and they understand what Hamas and Iran and Turkey and Qatar are after, and they are ready to support Israel in that. Of course, they have to be very cautious about the language they use, and they have to say certain things about Jerusalem and so on and so forth. But they are definitely more on our side than they are on Hamas's side, and this is extremely important. And the last thing I want to touch upon is what needs to be done now. We have to make sure that Hamas loses. This is what's important. And the Americans are putting this through assisting Abu Mazen in taking him as the leader when it comes to the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. I'm not sure this can succeed, but the Egyptians do the right thing. They take upon themselves the reconstruction of Gaza instead of letting again the Turks lead some of the reconstruction efforts. And I hope that we shall be able, together with the Egyptians, to block the capabilities of Hamas to recuperate and to reconstruct their losses in Gaza. Second thing that has to happen is to strengthen the Abraham Accords. If the Americans can lead a move that would strengthen the Abraham Accords and bring more countries in, especially Saudi Arabia, but Oman, whoever, this is going to be a major sign that Hamas has lost. And for us is to restore the status quo in Jerusalem, to make it clear to the Hamas that even though they are trying to claim that with this operation they managed to connect Gaza and Jerusalem, we should send a clear message that we are the sovereign element in Jerusalem. We are committed to the freedom of worship and to allowing everybody to pray in their holy sites. But we shall protect this in spite of the efforts of Hamas to force us to give up on our sovereignty there. And the fact that Jews came back to the Temple Mount yesterday morning was extremely important in delivering this message. And we should see what's going to happen with Sheikh Jarrah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me remind you to push the hand raise button on your screen in order to ask a question. One of the areas that has been really alive in the US and I think in Israel too is the whole arena of social media with regard to the last 2 weeks. And it's been a challenge. The Palestinians have really have a message that has appealed to a lot of people. Would either of you comment on the social media arena and how that impacts the thinking of how we can get support for Israel going forward?
I'll start, maybe Yossi will jump in a moment. One of the biggest challenges that was different from my point of view, having been in this arena of media for over 20 years, was not the fact that social media was there, Diane, but rather that social media makes the challenge of what I call your echo box much more challenging. Even to a certain degree in the way that perhaps both I and Yossi presented it, though I'm not sure. I certainly heard it from him. I'm not sure I heard it from me. Because Diane, either you're with us or you're against us. And that gets inside social media to become very extreme. And you do not get a chance to hear any other side when you're inside your own echo box. So that's one aspect. The second is that the framing this time, including from very leading, God, I hate doing things like this, but very leading US Jews, the framing inside the US for the first time for me was that Black Lives Matters and the Palestinians are very, very similar. And it's really good that at long last, you in the US understand that. And I'm sitting and thinking, oh dear, we have real challenges right now because it's so not the same. And I can have enormous respect for Black Lives Matters, but that's not the same. I'm willing, by the way, not even willing that. I'm like, this isn't about color. This isn't about race. It's so different. It could be about discrimination in Israel. The whole combination this time, much more than in the past, of mixing up all of these different arenas because Arab citizens of Israel were one of the arenas. So it came in where you were talking about Israeli citizens. And usually, I stand up and I'm like, Gaza Strip is not part of Israel. The West Bank has its own status. East Jerusalemites are residents. And it was talking about Israeli citizens. Now in social media, can I be rude to all of us right now? None of us are there because at least I'm not under 50. And literally, it's a different world in the whole socialization. It's the social media networks. I'm not talking about media in general, but those networks are quite close knit. You need to step into them. And when you're in them, it is very challenging to be able to change that echo chamber. So I'm agreeing with you. It's an enormous challenge. I had a wonderful, I don't know if that's the right word term for it, but I did a session with the Israel Campus Coalition specifically on this. I've lost my sense of time, but it was in the last week because there's a lot of organizations in North America that are trying to contend with it. It is not easy.
Yossi, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one word. I agree with everything Miri said, but if you want to be effective in the social media, you don't start during the war. You have to be there for a long time beforehand, and we are doing a relatively poor job in that. That's a pity. I'm not going to say much more than that.
Okay, thank you very much. Rachel, next question, please.
Next question is from Mort Klein of the ZOA.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. My question is, Black Lives Matter back in 2016 called Israel a genocidal apartheid group. And last week they sided with the Hamas terrorists, condemning Israel as a colonialist settler project. In addition, we had many congressmen from Omar to Cory Bush to many others, and even Senator Sanders only yesterday said the Israeli government is overtly racist. He doesn't condemn Hamas, doesn't condemn the Palestinian Authority, but condemns the Israeli government as racist. My question to you is, I've seen very few organizations speak out by name against these members of Congress, especially Sanders yesterday, and speak out against Black Lives Matter being an extremely hostile, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic organization. Do you think it's important for Jewish groups to speak out about these two issues?
Well, I think yes. I think it's more than important that the Jewish organization will speak out against this issue. This comes obvious in many respects, but I think it's important that the leadership of the United States speaks out against this kind of attitude. And I wrote actually an article about it, how this refraining from touching the issue by the leadership of the United States caused terrible damage, because this allows these anti-Semitic approaches to slowly infiltrate into the middle of the American public opinion. And that's something that is extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. And Israel is all right with any kind of criticism. It's no problem. You can criticize us. This is fine. But much of what is being said is just libels, and dangerous libels that are on the verge of anti-Semitism, and especially if you use the IHRA. And so it's a definition. So it's in my mind, we have to stick to the IHRA definition. And when somebody says something that is not in line with this definition, we should step up against it. Not only the Jews, also the American. And I was very happy to see today Biden speaking about against those anti-Semitic manifestations in the last few days. That was something very important. But at the same time, he was shaking hands and praising Tlaib a couple of days ago. So it's and she keeps speaking and saying all kinds of things that are totally unacceptable. So that's something that has to be decided upon. I understand the political sensitivities, but if you let political sensitivities to overrun your basic values, that's something extremely dangerous in my mind.
Miri, is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm breathing deep. I so appreciate, Morton, your question comment. I'm breathing deep because, Morton, you and I have known each other for long enough in that sense that I also believe in engagement. And I absolutely think that you need to stand up and say about the lies, about the libel, about what Yossi was saying. And I'm also reaching out right now to 60 participants of the Conference of Presidents that I still also believe that what we need to do is engage, not just in rhetoric. Engaging is both in social media and it's with the congressman. Having said that, for my entire life, I've always felt that there are people that I can't engage with, but I need then to sideline them and to engage with the silent majority. And I worry right now in that sense about the people who are impacted. I don't think you can engage with Tlaib or with Ilhan Omar. I don't think so. I'm past that, okay? But I'm really worried about all of the people that they are impacting in younger generation, in the framing. By the way, I'm more disturbed by Ilhan Omar than I am by Tlaib. I teach a lot of classes and my students do papers about these people and they have to present them as if they're them, both about Black Lives Matters and about them. And she has an agenda, which I find way more challenging for me as an Israeli than Rashida Tlaib, who sees herself as a Palestinian. With that one, as I said, I have enough challenges as is. But I really do hope that we can in some way, in that sense, engage and not disengage. Don't turn it also into a fighting, shouting match, but that's me.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll remind everybody to use the raise hand function for a question. Rachel, next question, please.
The next question is from Malcolm Homeline.
Thank you both very much. I would like to ask first to note that you're the first ones I've heard who made the connection to Iran, that we should be talking about Iranian-backed Hamas and reminding people of the connection of who supplied the weapons, who provides it, and that a victory of Hamas is a victory of Iran in their extremist ideology. But in the question of rebuilding, what role do you see for the PA? Is it in Israel's interest to see them play a larger role there? Will Qatari money be allowed back in? And through that, the influence of some of these other countries, Iran and Turkish officials were there the last 2 weeks twice, and a greater role for Egypt. How do we see to rebuilding that doesn't, again, create the same circumstance in a few years?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to make sure that the Iranian money doesn't come in. That is, and the Iranian and other kinds of support do not come in. That is the most important thing, with all due respect to the Qatari money that some of it goes to Hamas. This is the most important thing. We depend on that, on Egypt's cooperation and American cooperation. I think that's very important for us, and we shall have to make a much bigger effort than we did before, because we didn't do a good enough effort before. Especially, I think the Egyptians were trying, but not trying enough. That's on the Iranian issue. Regarding Abu Mazen, look, this entire war started with Hamas having some sort of insurance policy given to it by Israel. Since we said right from the beginning, we are going to restore our deterrence, but we are not going to force a collapse of the Hamas rule over Gaza. And as long as Hamas rules Gaza, they don't mind if somebody else is going to bring the money. Whoever brings it, it's fine with them. But they are going to decide eventually what's going to happen with this money, because they rule Gaza. So we should be very cautious not to fool ourselves into believing that by channeling the money through Abu Mazen, this is going to change the situation on the ground. And that is something that we have to find a way. We are all in favor of letting Abu Mazen run the business of reconstruction. But if Hamas controls the territory, how is it going to be done exactly? Why should Hamas agree to allowing Abu Mazen to be in charge of that? And I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult for him to do that. And it might end with us fooling ourselves that he's doing it while he's not actually doing it. And that's something that we should be very cautious of. That's in my mind that the main issue there. We want to see the reconstruction, but we have to find a way that we should be more confident that reconstruction is done properly. And we shall have to also to make it clear to Hamas that if they do not run the reconstruction properly, the option of collapsing the rule in Gaza will become more to our liking. We don't like it anymore. We don't like it at all right now, but it's going to be more to our liking in the future if it ends up with the reconstruction of every capability they had before this round.
Diane, as Yossi knows, I differ with Yossi on the answer here. So we've had this discussion before. I'm smiling, but not because it's a happy subject. A, Malcolm, you're absolutely right. There's Iran. And B, for all of you out there, there are 2.2 million people in the Gaza Strip. They have doubled themselves in the last 25 years. What are we going to talk about when they double themselves again? Somebody has to go in. And I think, and I was part of the government and the spokesperson in that sense, that the 14 years of saying that we're going to, yes, no, destroy Hamas, to destroy Hamas is to destroy, I think, militarily large portions of the Gaza Strip. And that price is not one that I am sure we can pay as Israelis. You can do so, but I think that that price is one where we would be ostracized by the world. That's what I think. So if you can't destroy them militarily because of the price, not because you can't do it, but because of the price, then you need to look at it in a slightly different way. And I think that the 14 years of our saying, any success inside the Gaza Strip is attributed to Hamas, so we can't help them, has not proven itself. So Malcolm, I'm going to offer a different idea, which is really, really challenging, which is with our eyes wide open, knowing who Hamas is, still allowing and enabling, if it's the Egyptians, the Turks that we totally can't stand, the Qataris, I don't know, the Chinese, it's not going to be the US, to go in and rebuild, because otherwise 2 million people will become 4 million people who will have absolutely no future, absolutely nothing to lose, and everything to gain by being against Israel. I mean, I worry about that in terms of both 10 years and 20 years, not doing anything right now and looking at it through the eyes just of Hamas rule there, can't let them win. I understand. I don't want them to win. But those numbers of that 2 million are constantly sitting with me here. The fact that when we transferred the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority, there were 1 million people, and they are now 2.2 million people. What can I say? There's not a lot of immigration into the Gaza Strip, and that's me being very cynical. That's something you need to contend with. So I actually do support if the United States would step in, giving the money, giving the background. If those Arab states that before Kuperwasser was talking about, and UAE, are ostracized in that sense by the PA, not even by Hamas. The PA wouldn't let in things that came from the UAE because they did agreements with us. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that we need to think outside the box this time, that we need to do a different approach. But that's me. I so don't represent right now the non-government of the state of Israel that we don't have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rahel, next question, please.
Next question is from William Daroff.
Hi, and thank you again, Miri and Cooper, for joining us. Now from the street of Tel Aviv, I ask you my question. I guess, Cooper, how do you see the Taylor Force Act, which you've written about at length, coming into play here as it relates to rebuilding Gaza and American interaction with the PA? And then Miri, to follow up on your very articulate statement you just made, the thing that comes to mind to me is Manish Chana. There was a lot of international funding that went in to rebuild Gaza 7 years ago, yet Israel is still in the same place. Hamas is still in the same place. What's the sort of strategic path here to move forward? And obviously, Cooper, you can jump on that too, but I'd be interested in your Taylor Force Act thoughts as well. And thank you both for joining us.
Well, thank you for the question. I think the Taylor Force Act should be, the Taylor Force Act should be preserved, and it's good. It's something that the United States has to abide by. And because, look, even during this round, the Palestinian Authority didn't come against against Hamas, and every one of those 200 and something Hamas operatives that lost their lives during this operation, their families are going to get stipends from the Palestinian Authority, not from Hamas, from the Palestinian Authority, according to the laws of the Palestinian Authority, because they lost their lives during the struggle against Zionism. That's what we have. Everyone who's wounded is going to get some stipends as well. So, and there are many. And so this is what we are looking at. Jibril Rajoub, standing on behalf of speaking on behalf of the Palestinian Authority, said, "We do not condemn the launching of rockets towards Israel. we praise it. And we think that they caused a lot of damage to the entity, that's how he called us, and has shaken their concept of security. That's what Jibril Ajoub had to say. So this feeling that the alternative, Abu Mazen, is some pro-Israeli guy, pro-peace. No, he's not, unfortunately. And there is no difference between the narrative of the Hamas and the narrative of the PA when it comes to the big issues of struggling against Zionism. There is the difference about what shall we do tomorrow morning? What can we do tomorrow morning? What is the importance we have to give to improving our living conditions while we are at fighting and struggling against Zionism? These are issues that they differ, and also they differ about how religious should the Palestinian state, once it is established, should look like. But not on the basic issue that the struggle against Zionism is the core identity of the Palestinians. And that's why I don't expect any change with the 2 million or 4 million or how many millions of Palestinians that are going to live in the Gaza Strip. As long as they are exposed to the things like Taylor Force or the payments of the salaries to the terrorists, as long as they are exposed to incitement, as long as they are exposed to all these lies, these libels that are being thrown at them, I can hardly see any change. And it's a pity. But I think the government, the administration understand this, and when they speak about the need to support the Gaza reconstruction, I don't think they speak about American money that's going to be used for that, but by facilitating other money to coming in order to reconstruct. And if the American money goes directly to reconstruction in the context of improving conditions in Gaza under a different premise of where the Palestinians are going, we are totally in favor of that. I mean, and that there's no difference between me and Miri.
And yet there is. How will I add in that sense to Yossi? I absolutely support, first of all, I'm not in any official position. And I say that
Neither am I.
Okay, neither of us are right now. These are two people that have both been in the system, out of the system. But on this one, I differ from Kuper. I've differed on this issue for many years now. And I think in this sense, my challenge to all of us is not to look at this in the very deterministic, there is no other choice way, but to open up to the idea that there are choices. We're making choices. And as I said before, I mean, you can choose to get rid of Hamas. That choice is going to have a price of a lot of, I mean, people in the Gaza Strip, maybe also in Israel. It's a choice. It's a military choice. It's just not, I don't think it's a good one. Having said that, when it comes to not enabling the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, when it talks about how the Palestinian Authority, and here there are three different aspects, the Fatah party, the Palestinian Authority, and the PLO, all three in that sense, and Hamas, because Hamas is not part of one or two or three at the moment. When we look at that arena, Malcolm, it doesn't make a smile come to my face, William, it doesn't make me happy. But the question is what I do with it. I think that the 14 years that have adapted over years, that what we say is we're going to contain it, I think that we need to offer a different idea. And I think that I've heard time and time again that that's impossible and that they need to be contained. And then there's going to be the connection to Iran. And I say, no, how about we try something else? We haven't actually tried not doing this in the last 14 years. And it's not the same, William, with the reconstruction, because the reconstruction after 2014 in that sense, where Israel did let in, didn't let in, did let in, didn't let in. Yes, the Hamas, meaning I said, go in with our eyes open. Hamas are going to try and rebuild. Hamas want to destroy us. I don't accept the same premise about Jibril Ajoub and the others. I feel strong. And I look at it from a point of strength. And I think we have to stay very strong. But I think that from that point of strength and of staying strong, that if we continue to look at that as something that needs to be contained, it's going to explode way worse. And I do think that there are ways to contend with it. But as I said, it's very much in policy, and it's not at all the policy of Israel right now.
Thank you. Rachel, next question, please.
Next question is from Betty Ehrenberg of the World Jewish Congress.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Miri. Thank you, Yossi. It's wonderful to see you. You had mentioned, Miri, and I think maybe you had mentioned a little bit too, Yossi, the whole phenomenon of the Arab Israeli populations inside Israeli cities that we saw shockingly become uncontained or uncontrolled or go on the kind of rampages. Maybe that's, first of all, that's touching a nerve in us because we have never seen that before either. And in our minds, in the minds of the American people, and certainly in the American Jewish communities, we see the coexistence, the peaceful coexistence that generally prevails in these cities as a model, as something that we point to with pride, actually. So it's also touching a nerve among us because we're seeing unrest in our own cities now, vis-a-vis attacks on Jews in New York this past week, in Florida, in Los Angeles, in London, from people who call themselves pro-Palestinian. And although these are not connected, these are two very different things. Nevertheless, I'm wondering I'm sure Israel is having conversations now about how to tackle this and what can be done about it. And I was wondering if you have been hearing any of the thoughts, and I'd be very, very anxious to know them. Thank you.
So Betty, I'm going to step in and I'm sure Yossi will add in. First of all, it's lovely to see you, Betty. I want to talk about the warts, the pimples, and the pus. And then I want to talk about what gives me hope. Because what I heard in your question was beyond warts, pimples, and pus. We're talking, hardcore, very troubling issues. And all of us saw it. All of us saw it. Now I'm breathing deep again, and I'm going to get past the pus. Because for the first time for me as an Israeli, I've lived here for 50 years. In the aftermath of those horrible confrontations by what I am going to call angry youth, and I want to hope marginal angry youth. And I want to remind us all, it wasn't only Arabs against Jews. There was an aspect of Jews against Arabs. Don't go over that one. For me as an Israeli, when I look at that, that's what made it so much harder in that sense. Okay. One of the things that's happened in Israel that I've never seen before, when this pus comes out, is that it's out. I can see the pimples. And I'm driving down the Ayalon highway. William just came back now from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. I don't know if he saw that, but I have never in my life in Israel seen billboards that are bought by insurance companies that aren't written in English for you, Betty. They're written in Arabic and in Hebrew, saying we have to get past this in Arabic and Hebrew, that we need coexistence. It's like an insurance company is putting out money for that. That one of the phone carriers put it out that we all live here together. We have to get past this. Let's go back to that coexistence that we were talking about. And I was overwhelmed by the fact that, it's a phone company. They're putting ads at primetime TV that they don't get money from, okay? Just talking, meaning for me, Betty, it brought out a silent majority that said, no. They are marginal. We are sidelining them. Let's get back to dialogue. I'm not saying everything's good. It's not. We're not there yet. But it brought that out. That gives me hope. And not only that in that sense, when it brought it out, but to me, it's just something where I'm sitting down and I'm seeing in the aftermath, and they're starting to show primetime TV in Israel, and all of this is happening in Hebrew and Arabic. It's not in English for outside consumption. It's about who we are. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it easy to get past. We have a lot of challenges that have, in that sense, the parallels of a segment of Israeli society that feels that it's discriminated against, because discrimination is unique to Israel. That was me being sarcastic, but these are things that we need to get to. Okay, so I'm as worried as you, but I saw a glimmer of hope. And as I said before, in that sense, in engaging, I'm not Pollyanna. I'm so not Pollyanna, but they live here and they want to live here. So we need to get past this.
Yossi?
Yes. I'm also sharing the same feeling that we need to find a way to overcome this, what has happened. But I'm less optimistic than Miri when it comes to analyzing what has actually happened, Betty. And it's nice seeing you. As Miri said, great seeing you. We have to realize that this is not a marginal part of the Arab population, and that the leadership of the majority of the Arab population, which is the Joint List, and especially, didn't come out as decisively as we wanted them to do against it. And this is really troubling. And this was not something done by some criminals and some untamed youngsters who are feeling deprived from all kinds of things that the government should give them. This was done on the basis of national and religious premises. That is the basis. And these people who went out to the streets, they don't want Israel to be the nation state of the Jewish people. They are anti this idea, not that they don't accept it. They are ready to take steps against it. That's where we stand. And they are, yes, they've been raised here. They are part of our society, a very problematic part of our society. And we can speak highly about the importance of coexistence and so on and so forth. Some of them maybe were appalled by all kinds of moves taken by extremists on the Jewish side, which should be deplored strongly. But some of them do that because they feel that this is the way for them to show solidarity with Hamas. We have to understand, out of about 2 million Arabs living in Israel, a little bit more, it's only something like 50-something% participate in the elections. The rest of them, some of them, don't participate in the elections because they don't. They are not ready to accept Israel as a state, and that's the way they express their reluctance to do so. So we have to be very open to unpleasant analysis of this situation. Now, one thing that we did until now, the security apparatuses here did not look at this issue as a real threat. They were looking only at cases in which there are attempts to carry out terror attacks, or when there is a political insurgency. But the wider picture was not something that the intelligence was looking at. Only during the riots, there was a decision to ask them to intervene. And ever since then, we know what's happening. The first thing they did was to arrest the deputy leader of the northern section of the Islamic movement, which the leader is Raed Salah, is in jail, and Kamal Khatib is his deputy. And he was arrested because I guess somebody in our security apparatus understood that the incitement comes from him. And I think we should take severe and determined measures against those who incite for such activities. Fortunately, now it's a much quieter situation, but we know something has happened. We cannot close our eyes. We have to do something. We have to arrange ourselves differently to cope with this kind of threat coming from inside Israel. And at the same time, I fully agree with Miri. We have to also take care of the extreme radical right within the Jewish community. We should take steps against them too.
Okay, Rachel, next question, please.
Next question is from David Schimmel. David, are you able to unmute?
Yes, yes, thank you. What would, excuse me, what lessons do you think that Hezbollah took from this entire event in terms of their own position?
If I may go first, because I have to go to another Zoom meeting. I thought this was going to stop at
Yeah,
6.
we'll close out at noon, so please go ahead.
Okay, so I think Hezbollah, on the one hand, is very happy with the strengthening of Hamas and the political level inside the Palestinian arena. But at the same time, looking at what Israel was managing to do is only, let me tell you the truth, it's about 1/10 of our capabilities against the Hamas infrastructure in 10 days. They learned many lessons operationally. For example, our success in hitting the UAVs right after they took off, our success in taking care of the threat coming from anti-tank missiles, our success in hitting the naval tricks and shticks that Hamas has developed in preparation for this operation. They realize Israel is very strong, and especially in our hitting of the very strategic underground subterranean facilities of Hamas. This, since Hezbollah is all underground, they now learn the lesson and they will take it into account. So they are very cautious and they make sure that they don't want to get involved. This is not the only reason. There are several other reasons why they don't do that. Situation in Lebanon, the fact that everything they built is built for something much bigger, not for the fight of the Palestinians, and so on and so forth. But having said that, I think from our point of view, having 4,360 rockets in 10 days from Hamas tells us that we are also facing a very considerable threat from the north, because they can launch 4,360 rockets in one day. So it's something that we have to also take into consideration and prepare ourselves. And that this costs a lot of money, and this is why we need your help, the American help, in having the money that will enable us to have enough capabilities to withstand the threat coming from the north, and not only the one coming from the south. Thank you.
Okay,
And
Mary,
I will have to leave because I have to jump at the other. Thank
I'll
you.
just add to the question that this evening, Hassan Nasrallah is due to give a speech. It is the annual speech that he gives on the day that Israel realigned itself into on the Israeli-Lebanese border, the 24th, 25th of May. So who knows, maybe we'll hear more from him tonight, because he hasn't spoken a lot over the last 2 weeks.
okay, well, thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate your insights, particularly right at the moment when we're really all trying to analyze what happened and what are the best strategies going forward. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you all so much. Laila Tov from here.
Thank you, Miri. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.